What I actually want to talk about is I've been noticing on the Telegram almost exclusively, I have a lot of right wing ankle biters on the Telegram. And they're always holding me up to some standard that I'm a fucking right winger. And they're holding me to that standard all the fucking time. Oh, Haas, you're not anti Semitic enough. Dude, I'm a communist with a capital C. I've never pretended to be anything otherwise. And it got me going and it got me thinking. I think I should actually do a pretty thorough lecture or a pretty thorough explanation and clarify this just so it's out there so people understand. Why aren't I a right winger? It seems like I'm aligned with people who call themselves right wing on things like the culture war, and when it comes to politics surrounding MAGA and Donald Trump. It seems like the country's polarized between left and right, and it's very clear that in most people's eyes, whether they're leftists or whether they're right wingers, that I am aligned with the right. That's what most people would think. Well, I want to first emphasize a little something before I get into the nitty gritty about why I am not a right winger. Why am I not right wing, right? Why don't I just take the dive and just join all the other right wingers and fully adopt their worldview and all that kind of stuff? Well, first of all, I want to emphasize that Infrared was launched and created in a time of perceived and unprecedented political realignment. That means that we believe that right now in America, we are undergoing a process of the realignment of what it means to be left wing and what it means to be right wing. And that the leftists are actually becoming what the historical right has always been, and elements of the partisan and dissident right are kind of approximating and getting close to, grasping the revolutionary tradition that began with the French Revolution, because they are placed in such a position of dissidence against the establishment, against the status quo. So first of all, our position has been premised on the basis of that foresight. I think another thing that I want to point out is that a lot of people have this idea that when you identify as left wing or when you identify as right wing, that means you're associated with other people who are left wing and who are right wing. And in my case, it's very clear that I hate all leftists. I hate all leftists, right? There's not a single leftist I could name that I like. I hate them all, right? So how could I be left wing? Well, if Infrared is left wing, it's clearly in a class of its own. Also something I believe, by the way. But they kind of have this herd mentality, if you're left wing or if you're leftist, then you're with the left, which we're not. Infrared is not with them, right? But if we're not with the left, are we with the right? Well, what does that mean, right? I think there's a lot of people who identify as right wing who are assuming an objectively partisan, counter-hegemonic, and kind of anti-establishment position. But on the other hand, on an ideological level and on a theoretical level, I still refuse to be classified as a right-winger or consider myself right-wing. I still do consider myself, in a qualified sense, to be left-wing. Now, I want you guys to get used to distinguishing this idea of leftism from the left-wing political alignment. To me, leftism is the herd mentality of people who are trying to produce a theory of what the left-wing political alignment is without actually being positioned there. Whereas in my view, the left-wing alignment politically is always about our revolutionary politics. If your politics is revolutionary, if you're positioned in such a way that you're a partisan, both in theory and in practice, that's an important caveat, then you are left-wing, right? The thing with right-wingers that's really awkward most of the time is that most of these right-wingers, of the dissident right, I should say, are positioned left-wing, but they have a right-wing theory. So it's a really obscure position to be in. To point out this irony, I'll put it this way. So the dissident right is being targeted by the FBI, and they're being hunted down by all the NGOs and the institutions. They're being censored left and right. They're being deplatformed. They're considered politically antisocial, and yada yada yada. And yet, Well, I mean, they are being cornered into having an objectively speaking. I'm not talking in terms of ideology. I'm talking actually in objective terms, right? They're being cornered to like possess an objectively revolutionary position with regard to the state. Like they are opposed to the state. They do not base themselves in any established form of power, period, right? Now, I like disagree severely with on a lot of things with, the America First crowd. Obviously there's a lot of this. I mean, actually I don't know the extent of the disagreements. I think most of them are stylistic and cultural, right? Probably. And also ideological, like theoretical, right? That's in the nitty-gritty. But you do have to admit something about those guys. And I could be wrong about this. I don't know the full story. I'm just telling you how I see it. Those guys don't seem like they base their power in any existing like ruling social formation. Like it doesn't seem like those people are those aren't the Peter Thiel people, right? Those people are not. I mean, what faction of the ruling class, for example, is bankrolling that whole thing? I don't think there is one. I don't think. So they're right wingers, but they don't represent any like aristocracy. They don't represent any of the forces of the ancien regime. Like in the past, the right wing was based in the nobility, or it was based in the Junker class, or it was based in, the capitalist class. But in this case, it just kind of seems like you have this relationship between influencers and leaders and like grassroots support. Now, you don't crucify me. I could be fucking wrong. I'm not an expert in the whole thing. But I'm making that observation because that's one of the examples of how right-wing politics, quote unquote, in its main thrust, right? I'm gonna qualify this as well because I'm aware of a few things when it comes to a lot of other of the elements of the dissident right. But it seems to be positioned in a left-wing way. Because the left-wing political position is not about what you think about culture or, gay rights. Or it has nothing to do with that. It's like, what is your position in regards to not only the state and the status quo, but like the extant forces of the ruling class? If you are aligned in a way that is against them, you would not typically be classed as right-wing. Now, I'll give you an example of this. Bakunin. Bakunin was an extremely fat elephantine man who I am the last person to be a fan of. But you couldn't really say Bakunin was a right-winger, could you? He wasn't a right-winger. He was an anarchist, and he was a vehement anti-Semite. He hated Jews. He was like extremely anti-Semitic, right? So were a lot of the other anarchists. But historically, we remember them as left-wing because they were positioned in such a way with regard to the state and with regard to the ruling class that made them revolutionary. So we remember them as left-wing just because of that fact. Not because they were progressive when it came to like all these different issues. No, they weren't. They were not socially progressive in any capacity, but they were still classified as left-wing historically. Now, somewhere along the line, and I'm not going to go into detail explaining why this is. You can read my MAGA Communism Substack if you're interested in further inquiry about this. But somewhere along the line, there came to be this moment where the left was associated with the progressivist agenda, progressivism. And that's what the left came to mean. That's what it means today as well. I mean, like, we don't really have a left when you think about it. The only left you have is like extremely incipient, and it seems to be taking weird form somehow, like on the right, but not really like the established right. I'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so Just to be clear. Now, in other factions of the dissident right, you do have entrenched interests. First of all, you have one billionaire, Peter Thiel. Okay. You also have a lot of other strange networks. Not a lot of people talk about it. So there's Peter Thiel. That's a huge part of the bankrolling of the dissident right. And then, when it comes to Steve Bannon, there's just this kind of weird network of European, like, monarchists who, like, actually are embedded in like, they have connections to European royalty, if you could fucking believe it. And they were behind a lot of the European right-wing populism in the 2010s. So that's a whole network. Daniel Burke has more information about it, but he presented it to me. By the way, like the fucking stream, guys. Are you stupid? He presented it to me. And I was quite convinced, right? I was quite convinced of what I saw. There's elements of the European ruling class, specifically European royalty, if you can fucking... And the church, and the Catholic Church. Some factions of the Catholic Church. That's definitely a real thing. And then you also have to understand there's this legacy of Gladio. And there's, you know, the ruling class is not left-wing or right-wing. But there are a lot of Nazi elements there. If you don't believe me, I want you to study the scandal from the 1990s about the pedophile ring in Belgium, which was related to NATO, top-ranking NATO officials, Gladio, and yeah, basically these like occult, Gladio Nazis in the ruling class, that they're these pagans, right? So there's something really weird there. It's very clear how at the very bottom of the barrel, let me tell you another spooky thing. At the very bottom of the barrel of the international phenomena of neo-Nazism, talking strictly neo-Nazism, like explicit neo-Nazism, at the very bottom, you'd think, oh, these people are white trash. This is like backwoods. And it's like, but at the very bottom, the most like scummy of the scummy of neo-Nazis, there's a direct connection between them. Based. Thank you so much, Lonely.
New fan. First ML person that I've seen that is based. Would you talk to Jay Dyer? You guys have some of the same conclusions, but he more NRX ortho, bro.
Yeah, I would talk to him, definitely. But, so at the very, the Dutroux affair, Dutroux, I don't know how to pronounce it, Dutroux affair, yes. So at the very bottom of the barrel of neo-Nazism on an international level, you don't believe this, but you just have to do your research. There's a direct connection to the people at the very top. There's a direct, the more down you go, as above, so below, the more down you go into the gutter, the more there's a connection there at the top. And actually, if you watch the show, True Detective Season 1, I think it illustrates this perfectly. In True Detective Season 1, you were dealing with like a pedophile occult ring at the very highest levels of society. Like the elite, eyes wide shut elites, right? But the villain in True Detective, he's connected to those people. He's living in the backwoods. And he's like some redneck in the backwoods. He's the scum of scum, most trashy of the trashiest. And somehow he was doing the work for them. So it's like at the very bottom, that's where you find it. That's how you get to the top. And a lot of people have a hard time grasping this because they're like, well, I mean, the swastika's banned everywhere. Being a Nazi is like the worst thing you could be in our society. Okay, but then again, being a pedophile is also the worst thing you can be. And yet, our elites are pedophiles, right? I think one of the biggest red pills, and a lot of people are not fucking ready for this, right? I'm talking people on the right side of things. We are ruled by people. There are, like, Nazis in power. Like, I can't 100% confirm that in America, but I know for a fact in Europe. In Europe, yes. Nazis are still fucking in power. And it's behind closed doors, and it's the most, like, it's just as much a secret as that they're pedos, right? And you're like, oh, well, how could that be if the ruling class is so Zionist? Well, because somewhere along the line during the Cold War, Zionists and these Nazis kind of came together and I guess let bygones be bygones and kind of fused together and merged together. Like forming part of the same agenda, right? I guess the idea, this implicit understanding was like, okay, we will solve the Jewish question by having all the Jews go to Israel. So that was the basis of the alliance between Nazism and Zionism. The idea was that Jews would just go to Israel, and that way there would no longer have to be a Jewish question. Because remember, a lot of the Jewish question, again, this is also something no one likes to hear, but it was not actually about the Rothschilds and, elite Jews in power. It was the fact that there were masses of Jews who represented this alien, foreign, outside element in the eyes of Europeans, many Europeans, and they couldn't really assimilate and fit into Christian or secular society even, right? These were not the elite, okay? Most of them were not. They were masses of them. They were living in ghettos and so on. And the thing that the closest equivalent to that today would be like, Muslim ghettos in Europe right now, right? Other immigrant communities, they have their own ghettos and they have their own slums, and there's kind of this tension between the native society and these kind of people who are being classed as outsiders or even foreigners in many cases, even if they weren't immigrating there. So that's an important thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to people find it so shocking that Gladio and Zionism are aligned. I mean, yes, because you need to realize that it was never the same elites that supported the Balfour Declaration also backed Hitler and Nazism. None of that's a coincidence, okay? In any case. Okay, so that's kind of a preparation and an introduction to where I'm coming from here. So then you have the Peter Thiel. So it's almost like the right, to me, this is my problem with the right wing, right? I know the left is captured. I know it is, okay? And I'm not saying this applies to all right-wingers. I'm just saying it applies to most of the established tendencies of the right. To me, the right-wing position is a loser position. It's a losing position. And I'll tell you why it's a losing position. Because it's always captured. It's always already captured. Now, as a Marxist-Leninist, we have a very rugged, tried and tested theory of praxis, which has never been correctly applied in the West ever, but it has outside the West. So we can, for example, give the middle finger to every Marxist and every leftist living in the West right now, and we could just apply this theory and we could build something out of it. We don't have to consult the existing captured left. So to me, it's like there's a way to be left-wing without being captured by the established left. All you have to do is repeat that original revolutionary insight in a new way. And that's exactly what Lenin did at the expense of the Social Democrats at his time. But in my view, to be the right seems like it's always captured by interests and groups and tendencies that pre-exist the ability to engage in any kind of new praxis, okay? And that's really where my problem begins. To me, there's something self-defeating about the right, because you want to oppose the status quo, and the captured left, which controls the status quo, at least it controls our media, like it controls the messaging that's sent to us. So you immediately go for the dirty secret. But you have to ask the question, How much of that plays into their hands?
Based.
Thank you so much, Amila.
Holy based lecture. Based.
Thank you so much, Amila. Like, for example, so many things are taboo in our society. And even illegal. Does that make them revolutionary? No, it's kind of why, it doesn't. If you, for example, are a pedo, that is illegal, and it's the most taboo fucking thing you can be. Does it mean it's revolutionary? Well, if it's revolutionary, why are the elites pedos? Because it's a trick. I think people need to stop coping, and let's just admit something very bluntly, okay? Let's admit something very, very bluntly. The majority of people living in America or even Western countries would not openly accept Nazism, much in the same way that they would not openly accept pedophilia. And the reason for that isn't because they believe in the sanctity and the preciousness of democracy. It's not because they're politically correct, and it's not because they're moralistic. Because Nazism entails, first and foremost, a type of nationalism that just the Balkan Wars. It's the chaos of the Balkan Wars. If you apply that to Europe or America, first of all, right? That would happen. So a lot of people think like, oh, the reason we're taught that Nazism is bad is because, the ruling class is trying to brainwash us. Well, okay, if you tried to apply Nazism in real life, you would have a war. You would have a race war of some kind. And then on top of the race war, you would have a civil war between the kind of people, between the people who are still struggling to resolve the central political contradiction of liberalism already. Like, if you take away our constitutional liberties, if you take away our democratic liberties, I don't mean that in the sense of like this neoliberal democracy we have. I'm talking about very base shit like freedom of speech, and you take all these things away, people will not accept that. There's going to be a civil war. Now, you could say something like, okay, that's even true for a proletarian dictatorship, Haas. And you're right. But we know that will lead to a civil war, and it's theoretically understood in that way to be a class war, right? But when you say that this civil war that some kind of fascism is going to bring about is, oh, well, that's just going to be a race war. Well, no, it's not, right? Because there's still a tension and an antagonism within the race itself that has to be resolved somehow. And the way it was resolved in Germany and Italy was war. That's why they had to invade other fucking countries. They had their own internal class warfare going on. And the way Hitler and the Nazis saw it was that we need more living space. They didn't need more living space. There was plenty of land in Germany. It's just that all the fucking land was owned by the ruling class. So this lower plebeian, peasant, and working class element that wanted more prosperity and wanted more opportunity, what the Nazis told them was, okay, we'll give you that. We'll take land from those Slavs and we'll let you populate it and we'll let you fucking take it. Okay? So that's why it's inherently related to war. So there are reasons why the ruling class pretends to oppose Nazism beyond ideology and sentiment and moralism. That's layer one. Beyond any kind of post-war, legitimation. That's layer two. And finally, beyond trying to suppress this sacred truth of Nazism. Because that occult truth is what they themselves fucking believe already. You don't believe me, you need to do your fucking research. That's layer 3. Now let's knock down each fucking layer. Okay, first of all, liberal opposition to Nazism, layer 1, sentimental and moralistic opposition, is full of nothing but hypocrisy. It's a weak stance. It's a weak stance that basically is like, oh, I can't argue with it, but it hurts my fifis. That's layer one, right? Most people's analysis. Like, yeah, Nazism may be correct ontologically and metaphysically, but it's like abhorrent to my senses. It's just nasty and mean and ugly. That's why when Donald Trump was bringing uncomfortable truths, he was associated with fascism. That's why I'm called a fascist, because that's that layer one retard consciousness. Okay, layer two is this idea, okay, but this is the maybe it's a neoconservative position of some kind. This is the post-war liberal order and it needs to be legitimated. Well, okay, then pull back the veil. What was the Cold War? The Cold War repurposed Nazism. This is what Gladio was. This was also what Operation Paperclip was, to fight the Soviet Union. All of the Nazis, intelligence on the Soviet Union was taken by the West. So on a structural level, Nazism was absorbed by NATO and it was absorbed by liberal democracy that legitimated the post-war order. So you had this kind of weird syncretic Nazi deep state that formed during the Cold War, which also was perfectly reconcilable with Zionism, in case people find that impossible to believe. So that's layer two. Now, finally, layer three is what, these esoteric Nazis like BAP, and BAP is like he's not even, I'm talking really, really nasty stuff. I don't even want to mention it because it's fucking scary shit. But those people arrive at insights which, just as below, so above. It's what the ruling class actually believes. Secretly. They do secretly believe that. Now, on a superficial level, thank you so much, Marching Orders.
Can a fundamental distinction between left and right be the conception of time? Cyclical time versus historical advancement.
No, I think dialectically, that conception of time is not distinguishable, right? So Bronze Age pervert, he says things like, we need to depopulate all of the non-whites to preserve the environment. I want you to know that even at the World Economic Forum, they basically say the same thing. At the World Economic Forum, what they say is that we have to make sure Africa can't industrialize. We don't want India to ever industrialize. We want to repress the potential of Latin America as well for the sake of the environment. And also, the population needs to be reduced to 1 billion people. And they believe in eugenics. So that extremely dissident right position from someone like BAP and from that whole crowd, that's exactly what the ruling class already believes. And a lot of people are not aware of that. Yeah, Obama said that to Africans as well. So it's like it comes full circle. No, they don't know this. This is the crazy thing, is that a lot of right-wingers are just opposed to what we have now. And it's the immediate thing to jump to is like, okay, what is the most silenced, edgy fucking thing that I can be? And like, okay, I have to be a far-right fascist, whatever, right? Because that's the most edgy thing you can fucking be. But what they don't realize is that they've already captured that. It's set up that way on purpose. I'm not being incredibly schizophrenic, like with a tinfoil hat here. I'll explain what I mean by that. Like, the ruling class doesn't believe what they tell us. What they really believe is almost exactly defined by what they repress in terms of what they tell us, because they don't want us to know this is what they believe. And they also don't want to have to deal with the consequences of their beliefs in reality. Far right is subjective. Wanting Europeans to exist is far right to people. Yeah, I get that, but we have to acknowledge here that if we are, I don't care if you're left wing or right wing, you have to acknowledge the reality of hegemony, ideological hegemony. If you're serious about politics, you have to recognize that a lot of the narratives that we adopt and a lot of the talking points we adopt and our worldview is shaped by forms of hegemony, right? We have different talking points that's derived from, okay, what do they say in your Discord community? How is this shit being spread? There are monads of influencers and institutions. Some of this can be traced to institutions. Some of it is grassroots, based in grassroots influencers. Some of it is based in stuff that's more ambiguous. But, this stuff doesn't fall out of the sky. A lot of times in my Telegram, right-wingers will come to me and just pretend like this is their independently formed opinion. I mean, granted, your opinion that definitely didn't come from CNN or your university, but you definitely did come from a community where you adopted that viewpoint. Now, I'm not saying that alone is discrediting, okay? Because infrared is the same thing. We are a community. We have our own worldview. And it's very clear, like, there's an infrared, thing. That's all out in the open. So I just want to say, let's stop pretending this is just individuals with different opinions. It's just not how ideology works. And it's not how politics works either. You have to accept and recognize the inevitability of hegemonies, of different hegemonies. So every talking point, I mean, when I argue with people about anti-Semitism, for example, forget anti-Semitism. This is not a diss. I'm just saying this is an objective fact. When I talk to a right-winger on Telegram, where I'm arguing with them, I can immediately tell, oh, are you part of Zolt's gang? Are you with Joel Davis? Are you with Keith Woods? Or are you with Nick Fuentes? Immediately I can judge it. Or are you with BAP? I can immediately discern that, right? Nobody is individual. Now, granted, the same thing applies to infrared. It's not hard to discern if someone is an infracell. It's not hard, right? It's easy to discern as well. But the difference is we don't pretend this is just like individuals, like in an unbiased, completely neutral way, just saying what we were born. It's not how it fucking works. There are ideologies, and these are not given. These worldviews that we have, they're not given by nature. These are ideologies that are subjected to social laws. When I say social laws, I mean different community, even drama between different communities, different stances, things. Nobody is just 100% independent. It just doesn't fucking exist, okay? I mean, the left is different because you can immediately just say, okay, you're a leftist. I don't care if you're a Hojaist or you call yourself a Maoist or you call yourself a democratic socialist. I can immediately just be like, okay, you're a leftist. Whereas with the right wing, it's like I have to discern what faction of the right. Thank you so much.
Do you agree that fascism is the political expression of imperialism and bourgeois democracy was the political expression of laissez-faire capitalism?
No, I think it's more thank you so much, you, for the 5. I think it's more complicated. I think fascism was the political expression of laissez-faire capitalism in its moment of crisis. Whereas I think globalism is the political expression of imperialism. But globalism inherits much from fascism and Nazism, which I'm not saying that superficially. There's stuff behind this. The difference between the left and the right is that when you see a leftist, you can immediately just say, there is no decisive significance to your sect. No, for example, if someone is a Marxist-Leninist, there is no decisive significance to being a Marxist-Leninist at all. You're just a leftist. Now, it may define your propensity to critique foreign policy more than a self-proclaimed anarchist would. But even anarchists are like, oh, Vosh is not one of us. So the left is pretty unanimously defined by just being the NPCs that listen to whatever the ruling class. So there's one ruling class hegemony, and it is inherently leftist, right? There's one ruling class hegemony, and it's inherently leftist. And then on the right, it's a tribalism of competing hegemonies. The right does not have one agenda or one hegemony. There's MAGA, and there's DeSantis, and there's Peter Thiel, and then there's this, and then there's that, and there's Fuentes, and then there's Keith Woods, and there's BAP, and then there's, these are not part of the same current. This is not one tide. The only thing that unites them is the fact that superficially they're not leftists. And that's it. It's just a negative equivalence. Thank you so much, D-Tab.
It's because fascism is essentially the unregulated terrorism of the lumpen proletariat, the dictatorship of the LP. That's why it's as above, so below.
You're so right about that. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to get to. You're so right about that, right? Yeah, the right, the Ted Kaczynski people. I mean, there's nothing that unites the right. Actually, it's so funny. In Charleston, they had a Unite the Right rally. It's such an impossible thing because the truth is that there's only one real right that's unified. And that you have to understand dialectics to get this. You have to understand, it's a profound dialectical logic at play here. The only way that you can understand the right, the real one, there's one unified right. It's leftism. All these different leftists who you think are on the left, that's the one right-wing agenda of the ruling class in play, in motion. These leftists are not going to be smacked with the red pill of being Nazis, but they are being led along a path. Oh, maybe we do need to curb the population. Yeah, I guess the planet does need our help. Oh, maybe we do need to support those funny mustache people in Ukraine. They don't seem so bad. Oh, they're doing the Hail Hitler salutes. Oh, it's not so bad. Maybe we do need to support them. Oh yeah, maybe we do need to support war, right? Maybe we do need to invade this country and exterminate the... Oh, I didn't mean it to say it like that, but those Russians are just not as civilized as us pro-gay Europeans. That's all I'm trying to say. Those Muslims, oh my God. Oh, those black people, oh, they're too anti-Semitic. Oh my God, those Muslims, they're not tolerant enough about women. Oh my God, right? It's like they're being led along. And it's just one right wing. It's one right wing. And you want to know where the real right is? It's leftists. And then these different right wing factions that are engaged in this tribalistic war for these competing hegemonies, they're only right wing because they take that for granted. They take metaphysically the reality of the status quo for granted. And they just position themselves in a way to be against it. Like they say, I am against the status quo. Okay, but what is the status quo? Is the status quo true? Is the status quo, metaphysically speaking, correct about itself? And for the right wing, they take that for granted. See, the one thing that will always make me a laughingstock for hardcore right wingers is when I'm dialectical about anything. They're like, what do you mean, man? You lost me there. You're talking nonsense. And it's like, but because on a metaphysical level, your consciousness is indistinguishable from a leftist. You have not actually taken the red pill. You have taken the red pill within the confines of the status quo. You've become the caricature of someone rebelling against the status quo. You haven't actually analyzed and understood our world in a way that is a threat to it, right? What I mean by metaphysical is this primary reality that is not normative. On a normative level, right-wingers, of course, are opposed to the status quo in terms of I want to do this or I think we should do that. That's normativity. But on a metaphysical level, which is the bedrock below that normativity, they take it for granted. They don't question, is this reality or not? Is that the correct reality or not? They don't question that. I'll give you an example of this. This is the easiest example. This is the easiest one to make you understand what I'm saying, right? It'll be so fucking easy when I explain it to you like this. I'm going to let this donation go through very quickly, though. Thank you so much, Siderite. Appreciate you.
If the right wing is against the status quo, wouldn't that make the right wing left wing or revolutionary?
As I said, a lot of right wingers are aligned as left wing, but their theory is right-wing. Their consciousness is right-wing. Now, as I'm trying to say, the best example of this is HBD, human biodiversity. Now, how many of you guys know about Quillette, Claire Lehman? How many of you guys knew about the new atheists like Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and all these dissident, extremely subversive, the intellectual dark web? I'm part of the intellectual dark web, right? Well, one of the right-wing positions you can have is to recognize the genetic basis for IQ. Right? Okay. It's very brave. Just hold your horses a little bit. What the fuck makes you think genes are real? You know what I mean? What makes you think IQ is real? Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who's not a leftist, by the way, he was always a righty, he debunked IQ. He said it was bullshit. He fucking completely debunked it mathematically. Taleb proved that IQ was the most conformist establishment notion precisely because it measures obedience to the institutions of liberal democracy, not the ability for a man to actually get his bread, like become wealthy, right? So metaphysically, there's a bedrock of this established science that nobody questions, right? There's that bedrock. Everyone takes it for granted. And then the right-wing position is just to take the metaphysical foundation to its normative conclusion. Liberals are hypocrites. Liberals and right-wing people, leftists and right-wing people believe in the same reality, right? The difference between them is that leftists very hypocritically refuse to take reality to its normative conclusion. Right-wingers, all they're doing is just saying out loud the normative consequences of the metaphysical reality that leftists take for granted. And that is what makes right-wingers subversive on a superficial level. The reason Nick Land is subversive isn't because he's advocating for eugenics and like destroying humanity and inhumanism and all that stuff. What makes Nick Land so subversive is he's just giving expression to the normative conclusions of the metaphysical foundations of liberalism. He's exposing the metaphysical foundations of liberalism itself and forcing us to confront that and confront those foundations. By making those foundations intelligible to us, like literally enlightening us with what those foundations that even leftists take for granted are, he's doing something revolutionary. And that is always why right-wingers have to be censored, and that's why they're such a threat to the status quo. It's not because what they're saying is actually revolutionary. What they're saying is what everyone already believes and takes for granted secretly, but is too afraid to fucking say. I don't think there's anything fucking brave about pointing out, oh yeah, like there's obvious realities of cultural differences between people, right? I don't think that's really brave. We all know that. When I go to Ann Arbor, Michigan, I see how white liberals act around black people. I see how they do it, right? So there's nothing really brave about pointing that out. What is brave is actually like understanding that. Like, what is that? What is that difference? What does that difference actually mean, right? It's brave to be pro-Farrakhan. It's not brave to be a racist. It's not brave. There's nothing brave about that. Everyone's racist. We're all racist already. Who cares? You know what's fucking brave? Defending Louis Farrakhan. That's fucking brave. Try doing it in public. See what happens to you. So, there's so much I gotta make clear. Thank you so much, Charmhole. Appreciate you, man.
Could you clarify exactly how what you're saying is or isn't horseshoe theory? Ye 24 Kanye West for President 2024.
No, it's got nothing to do with horseshoe theory. All right, it's got nothing to do with horseshoe theory. I always said this. I don't identify as left wing. I just am left wing objectively. I don't identify as it, because when you start making it an identity, then you're a leftist now, right? So our tribe is not the left. We don't have a left wing tribe. That's not what distinguishes us here at Infrared is being communist with a capital C, right? That's what distinguishes us. That makes us left-wing objectively. But being left-wing it's not what distinguishes us. We don't care that we're left-wing. We don't care that we're left-wing. That's an incidental result of just being a communist. But when you look at things at the face of it, right? On a historical level, who do you think has more in common with fucking Che Guevara? You think it's these blue hair pussies? You think it's a fat, ugly retard like Andrew Saturn? Or do you think it's like us? Who has more in common with the spirit of Che Guevara? Look at it objectively. We do, right? Okay, who has more in common with the spirit of Robespierre during the French Revolution? When he was giving speeches denouncing the enemies of the people, these fiery speeches, we do, right? So we very clearly have inherited the revolutionary tradition of the left. That's us. We just don't care that we're left-wing because it's not about being left-wing. That's not our tribe. We're the left-wing tribe. No, we're not, bitch. That's the most cringe shit I've ever fucking heard. It's not about being left-wing. It's about telling the truth. It's about being a revolutionary. It's about fighting for the people. Thank you so much, Amila.
Infrared Rise.
It's about fighting Babylon, right? That's what it's actually fucking about. We don't care that we're left-wing. Call us right-wing, call us left-wing. We don't give a fuck. But from a strictly scientific perspective, yes, we are left-wing. Of course we are. We're left-wing, and I'll tell you why. You don't ever want to be politically right-wing. You want to be personally right-wing. Be right-wing in your personal life. Don't be right-wing politically. Politics is a social thing, okay? Be right-wing with your girlfriend or your wife. Don't be right-wing politically. Because politics is sociological, okay? Politics is something that is if you're a revolutionary, if you're fighting the status quo, see, this is the truth. It's so easy to be right-wing politically and left-wing in the bedroom, isn't it? You right-wing politically, and then in the bedroom, what's going on? You're a fucking simp, right? That's how it is. You need to not be left-wing personally and on a personal level, right? Politically, it's good to be left-wing. But what does it mean to be left-wing? It means to be a revolutionary. It means to understand, this is the most important part probably too, that the essence of politics lies at its basis. Some kind of socius. That is your object. That is why you have Mr. Joseph Stalin. And then you have Mother Russia, the sociological reality of the people and the motherland. That's what makes Stalin a man. See, Stalin, you look at him, he's personally right-wing. In some sense, right? He's only able to get away with that, or do that, because he is politically left-wing. You understand? It does make sense, doesn't it? Yeah, he wasn't wearing rainbow colored socks. Whereas I feel like people who make their body left wing and they make it a temple of the left are actually politically right wing and also personally detestable people. They're politically right wing because they're kissing Democrat ass, first of all, and they never actually assume a politically revolutionary position in any kind of way. Like when it relates to the people, right? They don't actually ground themselves in the people, which is what politics is, by the way, in a revolutionary way. They just tail the institutions that rule over us. And, the left in particular is in such a tragic position right now because you have this situation where they're assuming that, oh, we need to take it to the max. We need to take it to the max. The institutions want to push all this LGBT shit, take it to the max. It's like, dude, you don't realize, though, that even the people who bankrolled you and bankrolled your fucking ideology are jumping ship and sending their money to fucking DeSantis now. The most pathetic, sad people in politics right now, it's like AOC, it's like leftists. You guys are getting thrown out. You're done. Your use has been exhausted, and they're throwing their money at DeSantis now. They don't want you anymore. Even the forces, the Rockefeller, all that stuff, even the forces behind the left-wing cultural agenda are going to rein it back just a little bit. And when leftists realize that, they are going to be so terrified. They're going to be so fucking lost. They're not going to know how to make sense of it. Because they're gonna be like, oh, this metaphysical force of progress that's pulling us in the direction of drag shows for children was actually based in like institutional and billionaire money that's now drying up and that's gone. So that force that's compelling you to like rationalize those kinds of things is gone, and you're in a state of utter confusion and you don't know what to fucking do. The majority of them are probably just gonna join the DeSantis deception. In all honesty, they're probably just going to join DeSantis or something else, something along those lines. If I'm being honest, in terms of what I predict. Okay, now we need to get a few things straight beyond what I just said, because I also want to talk about how the way I see it is that I always want to be something novel. I want to be something that is not been done before, because I think the things that have been done before in this country, in America, have failed. So people ask, Haas, why are you not part of the right? Why don't you just join these established right wing? Because I don't see a future for that. That's why. I don't see the future for it. I think that these are just copium circles. These are copium community circles, and that's it. I'm not interested. I don't want to join a community and be part of a... Thank you so much, Lionel. I don't want to be part of a... You guys, you notice... You're like, Hans, but you have a community, right? The infrared community. Yeah, I do. One that I built. So you see the point? Infrared built this. We didn't join anything. What community did we fucking join? None. This is us. Right? This is what I fucking built. If I built infrared, clearly I'm not a right winger. If I wanted to be a right winger, I would have just become a lieutenant in some other fucking right wing community. I'm not interested. This infrared clearly is not that, right? It's also not the left or leftist. It's not leftist. But clearly there's something missing on the right for infrared to ever have found its niche. Clearly there's something missing over there. And why would I want to surrender that? But, I mean, what does it really mean to be left-wing? That's because I want people to really think beyond culture. Because in the past 10 years, that's all the left wing ever fucking meant was culture. Actually, since the new left, when you people hated the fucking hippies, it was just culture. When you put that aside, the left means Che Guevara, right? It means Mao. It means Stalin. It means being a revolutionary. That's what it means. At the core of it is that it's political. The culture shit is what makes most people right wing. Most people are right wing because of culture, not because of politics. Because nobody wants to be left wing culturally. I don't. But you have to understand that culture and politics are not the same thing. Culture just gives expression to politics. So in an extremely paradoxical way, left-wing culture is paired with right-wing politics. Right-wing culture is based in left-wing politics. Now, why is that? Because culture is the literal opposite of politics. Culture takes for granted the power of the state. When you are right-wing culturally, you are refounding that established state and you're attempting to distill it anew. Right? When you are right-wing culturally, you're saying, I can't take the order of the state for granted. I have to watch Andrew Tate or some other shit to understand the nature of the socius and the nature of order. That positions you politically in a left-wing way only for the reason that you do not take for granted the power of the state and the institutions of the state. The same people that love Andrew Tate and the same people that love Jordan Peterson, if you showed them a fucking speech by Fidel Castro in the 1970s or Che Guevara or Malcolm X, they're like, based, based, based. They love it. They're super on board with it. Always. If you show them a speech probably by Michael Parenti, they'd love it, right? If you showed them, if you showed them other shit, they would be on board with it, right? Isn't the socius female? Yes, it is. Law should stay out of people's lives. Now, the reason these libertarians are not left-wing politically, are left-wing politically is because even though they're trying to refound state order on a political level, that's just quite the word, isn't it? Refound. Even if they're trying to replicate it in vain. See, let me put it, can I explain it in this way? Maybe I need to do a Microsoft Paint. It's almost like this. What you want to replace the status quo with doesn't actually matter. Actually, we're gonna do a mic. We're good. We're gonna do a Microsoft Paint because I think visually speaking, probably the best way to explain this. So we're gonna do a Microsoft Paint. All right. So when you have the state. When you have the state, right? And you are opposed to the state, right? Some kind of way. So you're poking holes in it or whatever, and you're just like, this is gonna look retarded, but you are positioned against it in some kind of way, right? Let's just say this represents opposition, okay? You might project some kind of... Is there a way to make this outline? You might project some kind of hypothetical state order to take this one's place, right? So you could just be like libertarian, whatever, nationalist, You know, who fucking knows? Conservative, doesn't really matter.
Based.
What does being left wing or right wing personally mean?
On a personal level, I'm talking probably culturally. Like, if you're left wing on a personal level, you're probably going to be like a hippy dippy peace and love type of guy. If you're right wing on a personal level, you're going to be like a fucking dictator. You know, you're going to be like a private dictator, right? Anyway, so these things in the imaginary that are projecting a replacement, that don't matter. These are not objective, right? The red, it's not, when I coded in red here, it's not objective. All that's objectively happening in reality is that there is a state order that objectively exists, right? Objective. And these are all subjective. So this thing here, the state order, this is not the result of an ideology or an idea. This is an objective status quo. So when you're fighting it, in actual material reality, it is objectively being fought because there's holes. See, when you put holes in the state order, it doesn't really matter what you fill them up with. You can put as many holes as you want. It doesn't matter what you want to fill them with. You're putting fucking holes in there, right? It's like somebody who's like, okay, I imagine that I'm gonna make you a cyborg and I'm gonna cut off your arm. It's like, I mean, you probably won't make me a cyborg, but you can definitely cut off my arm. You know what I mean? Like, I want to cut. Imagine you're in a room and someone has a chainsaw and they're like, I'm gonna cut off your arm and replace it with an octopus tentacle. Okay, objectively, that's not possible. You may want it to be an octopus tentacle, but what you're objectively doing is cutting off my fucking arm, right? That's the only thing that is registering in material reality. So when you're positioned against the state, the only thing that is being registered in material reality is the holes you're putting in, it's how you're fighting it. That's the only thing that's registering. No one cares about your ideology. That has not been established in any objectively real way. So there's something inherently bitch-made when people say something like, oh, Hans, you are working with people who just want to replace the state with a free market hellhole? And I'm like, why are you assuming the free market hellhole can exist? How has it proven its ability to exist? You're like, what about people who want to replace it with fascism, Hayes? And then I'm saying, okay, but that's not how fascism ever existed in reality. It didn't exist because it was putting holes in the state order. It existed because it was precisely the state's response to those holes. It took as its bedrock, and it's like DeSantis is where fascism is going to come from, not MAGA. DeSantis, where you take the establishment for granted and kind of use it as the premise with which to enact some kind of whatever change. I mean, like, that is DeSantis. That's what Hitler and Mussolini were more like. Hitler and Mussolini took for granted the military-industrial complex, the ruling class that existed in Germany and Italy, the institutions of the liberal state, they took them for granted. Even the civil society of liberalism, they took for granted. They merely curtailed rights. They didn't introduce any positive order that sublated the previous one. It was still just some emergency circumstance on top of the order that previously existed on an objective level. Okay? Now, people love to talk about economic systems specifically. So I'm going to spell this out because a lot of people have a hard time with this one, right? So let's do it. What is the relation between an economic system and political hegemony? What matters is not policy made from scratch, but beginning from scratch. What do I mean by this? People are like, oh, you're not actually revolutionary, Hayes, because you're, under your proletarian dictatorship, there's still going to be markets and there's still going to be the commodity form. Nothing changed. No, something did change. At least the old commodity form was destroyed and a completely new one took its place from scratch. Let me tell you something. Anarchists always use this criticism. They always say something like, under the communism, nothing changed because they didn't abolish the state. Wait a second, retards. They did abolish the state, and they replaced it with a new one. No, it's the new boss, same as the old boss. Oh, it's not the same as the old boss, though. It's a completely new boss. Is it still a boss? Yes. But that's what a revolution is. It's coming full circle. I'm calling your bluff, anarchist. Prove to me that there is no difference. It makes all the fucking difference in the world. That's what moved world history. That's why the Second World War happened. That's why the Cold War happened. It made all the fucking difference in the world. It made a difference for history, maybe not to your ideological vision, because you can't notice the difference. There is a fucking difference. The difference is the objective form of power was actually overthrown and replaced. Meaning there is nothing in the Soviet Union institutionally or structurally or by way of a certain social class or ruling class formation that tied the Bolsheviks down to the old status quo. That takes balls. When you're a pussy, you are going to bow down to powers that be. When you're Ron DeSantis, you're getting money from Sheldon Adelson, and you're getting money from all these other lobbyists, and you're getting money from the ruling class and Wall Street. And those are the people supporting you. So you have strings attached to you. It takes balls to do anything from scratch. It's not the fucking same. Because the difference is, if I become dictator of America and I destroy the old ruling class and have a free market in America or whatever, a market system of some kind that begins from scratch from year zero, that has no basis in any kind of loyalty on my part to the existing ruling class. That's why when people say China's socialism is just capitalism, you're wrong, bitch. Because the new class of capitalists that have formed in the past 30, 40 years, they formed under the Communist Party. That did not evince any form of corruption in which the Communist Party was structurally attached to some capitalist class. No! The Communist Party still has political hegemony. They have overseen the rise of a new class. They are not embedded with or beholden to some class that premises its existence. So it's not all the same. And that's why people don't perceive politics correctly. They don't make their friends and enemies on the basis of who is actually going to get us to year zero. Let's just fucking put it that way. Year zero. Who's going to get us to year zero? That's what politics is about. Politics is not about what does your year one look like? I don't care what your year one looks like. Are you going to get us to year zero? Are you actually going to crash this fucking system? I don't care what you want to replace it with. But are you really going to crash it? Are you really going to be a revolutionary and make us completely free from the past? What do I mean? Completely free from the ruling class. Completely free from the institutions. Completely free from the formations of power that are established and exist right now. If you are even marginally close to making an impact by way of that, you are my ally. I don't care what you want to replace it with. That is immaterial. What it will be replaced by will be in a. This is you guys want to understand my worldview? Then I'm giving it to you right now. In the purity of year zero, a new order will be formed on the basis of the necessity, the true material, historical, and ontological necessity of the revolution. The new order will be formed on the basis of the necessities of the revolution. It will be the revolution that dictates what comes after year zero. So I'm not worried about what people imagine the future is going to fucking be. Because I have my faith in God. I have my faith in history. That from the purity of year zero will arise an order worthy of that revolution. And I cannot make myself any more fucking clear. I don't give a fuck what you think you want to replace this rotten establishment with. If you are serious about bringing it down, I trust what will come afterwards. All we have to do is be faithful to the revolution. That's all we have to do. How do you think Soviet order was formed? You think Lenin was sitting around and saying, oh, this is what I want society to be? No! It was on the basis of the necessity of the revolution. We don't want to sell out to the bankers in France and England and America. We don't want to sell out to the nobility and the Russian ruling class. We don't want to sell out to the powers that be. We want to build a new form of power. We want to be faithful to this new form of power. And on that basis, a new order was formed. If you don't sell out to the powers that be and that are established here and now, that's all that fucking matters along the way. A new order will arise if you're faithful to the revolution. That's all that fucking matters. Be faithful to the revolution. Be faithful to year zero, and you will get a real new order. A revolutionary new order. That's what Soviet order was, by the way, from the get-go. I'm not interested in having a ideological preference for the future. I'm interested in the material necessity. I'm interested in how the steel will become tempered by fire, not by ideas. I'm interested in what happens when you throw a state and you throw a people in the wilderness of year zero. How do they make it out? That's what I'm interested in. I'm not fucking interested in being a bitch and saying, oh, this is how I want to make... No, you have to throw your ass in the middle of a forest naked in the Arctic tundra. How are you going to fucking make it out? That's what's going to make you as a man. When you sit here and cope about what you're going to do, all you're telling me is that you haven't done it yet. Thank you so much, Arwell. When you sit here and cope about how I'm a socialist with them and we're going to do this, I have all these ideas. You're just telling me you haven't done it yet. That's all you're telling me. You have not done this yet. Because there's a big difference between what you expect the future to be and what it's actually going to be. But being a revolutionary is something you can be now. And all you got to do to be a revolutionary is to be independent from the powers that be. To not be nobody's bitch. That's all you got to fucking do. Are you a man? Is your position based on something you believe? Or are you just following along with what they're telling you to? The people in power, the TV. Are you scared to contradict the TV? Are you scared? I'm not scared to contradict the TV. I'm not scared of any ideological position. If I'm a Marxist-Leninist, and this is the one thing people don't fucking get, and it's why on Twitter they accuse me of not being a communist. I don't care what other Marxist Leninists think. I'm not doing this to be part of a community. I'm not doing this to be part of a network with other people in it. I'm not. If I'm a Marxist Leninist, it's not because I'm too much of a coward to be a fascist or to be a this or to be a that. It's because I actually believe this. I actually believe this shit. Fancy that. I actually believe this shit. I'm not scared to be a fascist or a third positionist. I'm not scared to be that. I would be that if I believed in it. I don't believe in it. I'm not scared to be a dissident. I am a fucking dissident. Already. It's like these leftists are after me more than they are against a lot of other people. And if not, it's only because of fame and notoriety. These people don't accept me. In their eyes, I am already Hitler in their eyes. So I'm not scared to have that ideology. Because I'm already that anyway in their eyes. So when I tell you I'm a communist, and that I'm a Marxist-Leninist, and that I'm a Stalinist, you best believe it's because it's actually what I believe with conviction. Because I'm not getting any reward for this. They already call me a fucking fascist anyway. Nobody, I'm not attached to an institution. CPUSA calls me a fascist. There's no communist party in the world that recognizes me. I'm not attached to anything. I actually believe this shit. But it's like, yeah, where I stand is very clear. Like, well, Hans, why are you friendly to right-wingers? I'll tell you why I'm friendly to right-wingers. Because I know they're not speaking on behalf... I mean, sometimes they are. But even if you're speaking on behalf of your little Discord cult, I prefer that to someone who speaks on behalf of the fucking World Economic Forum and CNN. I don't want to talk to a bot. Even if you're one of those right-wingers, you're like, Hawes, why have you not addressed the question of like what Keith Woods told me to talk about? And I can clearly see you're a Keith Woods NPC. I'm like, okay, but I could still respect you a little bit more than somebody who's an MTV NPC, right? Because in order to be that kind of NPC, you have to become detached from the mainstream in some kind of fucking way. Which means you have to have some backbone, right? You can't just be a jellyfish. Maybe you've adopted a new cult, but you still have to have a backbone to fucking do that. That's why I can respect that, right? Being left-wing doesn't mean my friend-enemy distinction is defined by some theory of right and left. I could care less about that. I'm left-wing because politically, communism is revolutionary, and I am a communist with a capital C. I'm not part of the left as they exist. I'm part of the left as it is, which is being revolutionary. Not as it exists or as it's established, as it is. If you can't draw that distinction, I don't know what to tell you. Because it seems pretty simple to me. Seems awfully simple to me and to where I'm sitting and for where I'm standing. Motherfucker. Also, here's the problem I have. Every time, and I'm not doing this I'm doing a friendly criticism. Because some right-wingers I'm very friendly with. But my friendly criticism is that every time I talk to a right-winger, I kind of just feel like they're repeating someone else's knowledge. Like, they never talk to me with, like, in the spirit of open inquiry. Like, they never ground it in their actual belief. They're like, well, like, what about the reality of race? And I'm like, okay, where did you learn that? What do you mean by that? They never, like, beat it down into its premises, right? It's always like some community, right? It's some, like, socially validated And I know this sounds exactly like the left, but the difference with the right is like these are much smaller communities, right? So whatever is the common sense that prevails there, it's like that's not my common sense, right? But I just always feel like it's never based in a spirit of open criticism, critical thinking, right? I don't know. Well, let me preface that actually. Let me clarify that. I mean, it seems like it's always about um formalizing it but not being it. Like for example, like look at the word nationalism. I'm a nationalist because I believe in the idea of the nation. Well, like what about the being of the nation? Do nations pre-exist your ideas about them? Of course they do. So what's the point of being a nationalist? Isn't it superfluous? If you believe in your nation, then the nation must be an object. It doesn't need an ideology. But I feel like this is my problem with the right. I feel like there's some things that shouldn't be turned into an ideology. Like for example, why do you need to turn not being a cuck into an ideology? Like if you ask me, if you ask some of these right wingers, like, yo, why are you not a cuck? And they'll be like, well, it's because I believe in Aristotle's axiomatic principle of like, okay, and ask me why I'm not a cuck. Yo, Haas, why are you not a cuck? Are you fucking kidding? Because I'm not a bitch. Simple. It comes from my heart. Because I am that. You know what I mean? I don't make that an idea. That's my flesh. That's my being. That's my soul. That's what I am as a man. If I'm a cuck, I'm not a man. I'm not breathing anymore. It's on my honor. It's on my honor. But a lot of these right wingers, yo, why are you not a cuck? I think that I believe in family values and I believe in the. Okay, ask me if I believe in family values. Yo, Haas, do you believe in family values? Yeah. Yo, Haas, would you defend your mother or your wife? On my life, I would. Right? Ask right winger, yo, why would you defend your mother from danger? I would do it because I am personally a race realist myself who believes in family realism, and I believe in the biological imperative. It's like, yo, why are you making it an ideology? That's not the realm of idea. That's not an idea. An idea is more than that. Okay, that's not the realm of ideas. That's the realm of That's the realm of something that pre-exists ideation. That belongs to the realm of something true tradition, true traditional values, belongs to a sphere that precedes ideation. It is in our unconscious. It is part of our being. It precedes ideation, right? It's non-negotiable. The realm of the idea is precisely the realm of where we have doubt or we have uncertainty about that pre-existent realm, right? When we don't know just with our soul what the path is. An idea speaks to the whole of this. An idea is something that reconciles the whole thing. It's like the idea of an era, for example, speaks to the living soul of that ambiguous pre-Socratic realm that pre-exists ideation itself. It speaks to that. It reconciles it, right? It completes the logos. It completes a logos. It's the end point of the logos. It's not your justification. It's your revelation. It's revealed to you in a way that reconciles the whole. A true idea of the era is an idea that makes sense of why you're not a cuck. But it's not the reason you're not a cuck. There's a big difference. it's compatible with the inner feeling you have that makes you not a cuck. It speaks to that. It gives expression to the inner freedom and striving of your soul to be more. Big difference, though. When I speak in the realm of ideas, I speak in the realm of something that speaks to the whole of being, or to the whole of a history, to the whole of a country, and to the whole of an era. I don't speak in regards to something that should have its basis in a very rugged, unconscious common sense. I don't justify that with ideas, because it's not, because you're telling me when you say something like, okay, another thing I don't like is when they're like, yo, why are you a racist? They're like, well, as a race realist. It's like, no, you're a racist because Somalis make you uncomfortable. When you're on the bus with them, you have a very visceral reaction in terms of what you feel. You're made uncomfortable by these foreign, different people. And that's why. And everything, all this shit you're saying is just a cope for that very simple feeling you have. Don't pretend it's because of your ideas, because it's not. It's not about ideas. Now the question is, why are you a racist? Do you have to... Well, because I'll tell you why you're a racist. Here's the truth. Because you don't even know yourself. You don't know what you are. You have no sense of your own being. So when an other comes, it gives you such an anxiety, right? Because it, for the very first time, imposes upon you the necessity of thinking about, what am I? Because I am not just universal humanity as I was born and raised to think. There's different people that remind me that I am something in particular. And all of the ways in which people try to make sense of what they are fails, right? Oh, I am the white race. I am the Aryan race. No, you're not. You're a fucking Irish guy on the train. I am the Aryan race. No, you're not. You're some fucking guy in Finland, okay? What you really are is an unresolved history that is made manifest at the level of your state. What happened with Gladio? What happened with NATO? What happened with the Cold War? What happened with how your fucking government got took over? What happened about how your labor leaders got assassinated? What the fuck happened with how your opposition revolutionaries got massacred by death squads bankrolled by the city of London? That's what you fucking are. You're an unresolved history. And you gotta remember that history and get back into the ring and get back into the fucking fight. Because you're a goddamn Finnish patriot. You're a goddamn Irish patriot. And you gotta fight for your history. Because you forgot about it. You forgot about the way your state was co-opted. You forgot about the way they robbed you. You forgot about the way the imperialists took over your country, for example. If I was sitting in, let me tell you something. If I'm in Palestine, and I suddenly just decide to forget the whole Israel thing, and then, some Yemenis migrate to Palestine, and then they make me uncomfortable because they're different from me. Why don't Palestine... I'm going to tell you something. Why don't Arabs feel xenophobic toward other Arabs? A lot of the time. Now, sometimes they do, but a lot of the time they don't. Why is that? Why don't they have that problem, right? There's prejudice and shit, but it's not to the point where they're like... Now, with Syrian refugees, it was a huge thing. A lot of it's sectarian a lot of time. But it just seems to me that if you're living in one of these Middle Eastern countries, it's so tribal that like an outside foreigner, it's like whatever, right? It's not really that different from you. But why is that? Because if you're a Palestinian, for example, you remember what you are. You're a Palestinian. Your olive trees and your farm was robbed from you from your grandpa 70 years ago, you never forgot that. You never forgot what you were. You never forgot what your history was. So you're confident about what you are. It's very clear what you are because you're in the process of your history, fighting for your people. See? It's that simple. If you were living in the Congo under colonial occupation and you forgot that you were colonized, it'd be very easy to get caught up in some other shit. But the minute you remember what you are, thank you so much, Amila.
Based Eastern German communists.
Absolutely based. The minute you remember what you are, suddenly you're getting back into the ring. This shit is not resolved. This is why I'm a communist. I am one of those people who's like, yeah, all this racial shit is because it's just a distraction from the class struggle. But I'm not saying it as simplistically as some. No, I mean, race is real. There's a reality to different peoples. I'm not denying that reality. I'm just saying racial demagoguery stems from you not having your own history made sense to you. When you have an when you have a lack of acquaintance with the unresolved nature of your own history, that is going to manifest in extremely disjointed and false ways. And that to me is what false consciousness actually is. That's what it is to me. It's not, it's not, oh, this person's not a Marxist, so it's false consciousness. No, I don't buy that. But it is something more like, you have not made sense of your own reality. I think that's definitely a very real thing. Making sense of your own reality, Marxism might help with that, but that's not the same thing as an ideology. It's like you've made sense of it, your symptom. It's almost like you got a pain in your ass, and then all of a sudden you touch your left cheek in such a way that you've got to the source of the pain. And you're like, oh shit, I made sense of it.